Welcome to Unwrap Reality, where we narrate stories on things that happen in real life.
What happens when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally turn their backs on you at your lowest moment? Imagine being 19 years old, scared and pregnant, only to have your own parents kick you out with nowhere to go. That was me. My name is Sarah, and this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about resilience, revenge. Not in the violent sense, but in the quiet satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. If you've ever felt abandoned or underestimated, then stick around because this one's for you. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business. Life wasn't perfect, but I always had my family, or so I thought. When I found out I was pregnant during my freshman year of college, I thought they'd be upset, sure, but supportive too. After all, isn't that what families do? Instead, I got silence. Then anger. And finally, rejection. Standing on the porch with nothing but a duffel bag and tears streaming down my face, I made a promise to myself I would survive without them. And not just survive, but thrive. What happened next changed everything. Let me take you back to that day. The day my world shattered. I was sitting at the kitchen table, heart pounding, trying to find the right words to tell my parents about the life growing inside me. At 19, I wasn't ready for motherhood, but I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to keep my baby. Maybe I was naive, maybe I underestimated how they'd react, but deep down, I thought they'd stand by me no matter what. When I finally said it, "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant," the room went silent. Not the kind of silence that gives you space to breathe, but the suffocating kind that makes your chest tighten and your throat close up. Their reaction was like a punch to the gut. My dad stood there, his face red with fury, yelling things I'll never forget. "How could you do this to us? To our family name?" My mom didn't say much. She just stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize anymore. Before I could even explain or beg for understanding, they gave me an ultimatum. Either get rid of the baby, or leave their house. Leave their house, as if it had ever truly been mine. That night, I packed a small bag, clutching the sonogram picture I'd gotten earlier that week, and walked out into the cold, uncertain world alone. Looking back now, I realize how young and terrified I was in those moments. Every step away from that house felt heavier than the last. I remember crying so hard I could barely see where I was going, wondering how the people who were supposed to protect me could turn their backs so easily. But even through the pain, something inside me shifted that night. A fire ignited, a quiet determination to prove them wrong. Little did they know, this betrayal would become the catalyst for everything I achieved later in life. And trust me, they weren't prepared for what came next. The first few months were a blur of exhaustion, fear, and desperation. I crashed on a friend's couch for a while, but when that didn't work out, I found myself living in my car with nothing but a sleeping bag and the clothes on my back. It was humiliating, especially having to park outside 24-hour diners just so I could use the bathroom or wash my face before heading to my shifts as a waitress. People always say you don't know how strong you are until life forces you to be. And they're right. Every day felt like climbing a mountain with no end in sight, but somehow, I kept moving forward. For my baby. When my son Liam was born, something inside me changed forever. Holding him for the first time, feeling his tiny hand wrap around my finger, made every struggle worth it. He wasn't just my child, he became my purpose, my reason to keep fighting. During those sleepless nights when he cried endlessly, I'd rock him and whisper promises I swore to keep. "You'll never feel unloved, you'll never feel abandoned, not like I did." But raising him alone meant making sacrifices I never imagined. I worked double shifts at the diner, attended community college during nap times, and survived on instant noodles because that's all I could afford. Life was brutal, but I refused to let bitterness consume me. Amidst the chaos, I discovered an unexpected escape: crafting. Late at night, after Liam fell asleep, I'd sit by the dim light of a secondhand lamp and lose myself in creating things. Little knitted animals, handmade cards, even custom jewelry. At first it was just therapy, a way to quiet the storm in my mind. But then, one of my coworkers saw what I was doing and insisted I try selling some pieces online. Honestly, I laughed at the idea. Who would want to buy something made by a broke single mom? But she pushed me, saying, "Sarah, you've got talent. Stop doubting yourself." Reluctantly, I posted a few items on Etsy, and within days, someone bought one of my necklaces. That first sale might not seem like much now, but back then it gave me hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could build a better future for us. That first sale turned into 2, then 5, then 10. What started as a desperate attempt to make ends meet quickly grew into something I never saw coming, a business. Each order felt like validation, proof that I wasn't invisible, that my hard work mattered. I began experimenting with new designs, pouring hours into perfecting every detail. Word spread slowly at first, mostly through word of mouth and glowing reviews from customers who loved the personal touch I added to each piece. But one day, everything changed when a popular lifestyle blogger featured one of my handmade bags in her Small Business Spotlight video. Overnight, my little Etsy shop exploded. Orders flooded in faster than I could keep up with. Suddenly, I wasn't just crafting for fun or survival, I was running a legitimate business. I hired my first employee, a college student named Mia, to help manage orders and shipping. Then came partnerships with influencers, collaborations with other small businesses, and features in online magazines highlighting the single mom who built an empire. It was surreal, almost like watching someone else's life unfold. Every milestone felt like a slap in the face to those who doubted me. The same people who told me I'd amount to nothing without them. But success didn't come without challenges. There were sleepless nights, spent learning how to scale a business I barely understood. Moments when I questioned whether I was cut out for this kind of responsibility. And let's not forget the guilt. Oh, the guilt. As much as I wanted to be there for Liam every step of the way, building a company meant missing recitals and bedtime stories more often than I cared to admit. Still, I reminded myself why I started this journey in the first place. To give him a life full of opportunities, stability, and love. With each obstacle I overcame, I grew stronger. Not just as a business owner, but as a mother and a person. By the time I hit 7 figures in revenue, I knew I'd proven something to myself. I didn't need anyone else's approval to succeed. By the time I turned 28, my brand had become a household name in the e-commerce world. What started as a side hustle selling handmade crafts had transformed into a multi-million-dollar empire, with products ranging from custom jewelry to home decor lines sold in major retailers. My designs were featured in glossy magazines, and I was invited to speak at conferences about entrepreneurship and resilience. People called me an inspiration, a symbol of what could be achieved through sheer determination and grit. But behind every polished interview and photo shoot lay years of relentless effort, the kind most people only see when it's neatly packaged for public consumption. The higher I climbed, the more surreal life felt. One moment, I'd be walking red carpets at award shows. The next, I'd be FaceTiming Liam while he told me about his science project or begged me to come to his soccer game. Balancing fame and motherhood wasn't easy, but I refused to let success overshadow the reason I worked so hard in the first place. Whenever things got overwhelming, I'd look at the sonogram picture I still kept tucked in my wallet, a reminder of where it all began. It wasn't just about proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about building a legacy for my son, showing him that no matter how hard life gets, you can always rise above it. Despite my achievements, there were moments when the past crept back in, uninvited. Late at night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I'd sit alone in my office staring at old family photos. Memories of holidays around the dinner table, laughter echoing through the house, things I once took for granted, would flood my mind. Part of me wondered if they ever thought about me during those quiet evenings. Did they regret their decision? Did they even care? I pushed those thoughts aside quickly, though. Dwelling on them wouldn't change anything. Instead, I focused on the present, the empire I'd built, the team who supported me, and the little boy asleep down the hall who made it all worthwhile. For the first time in years, I felt truly untouchable. Then came the call that stopped me cold. It was a voicemail. My mom's voice trembling as she spoke words I never expected to hear. "Sarah, it's me, your mother. I don't know if you'll listen to this, but I need to say something. We were wrong, so wrong about everything. Please, can we talk? Can you forgive us? Her tone was raw, pleading, almost unrecognizable. For a moment, I just stared at my phone, heart racing, unsure whether to feel anger, sadness, or disbelief. After all these years of silence, why now? Why reach out when I finally had everything I ever dreamed of? At first, I ignored the message, convincing myself it didn't matter. They'd made their choice, and so had I. But then another one came, and another, each filled with excuses and apologies. My dad even chimed in on the third call, his voice gruff but laced with regret. We thought we were doing what was best for you back then, but we see now how much we hurt you. You have every right to hate us. Hate? Hate wasn't the emotion consuming me, it was confusion. How could they possibly think a few tearful messages would erase over a decade of pain? Still, their words lingered in my mind, planting seeds of doubt I couldn't ignore. I wrestled with the decision for days, torn between confronting them and shutting them out completely. Finally, I realized something. Ignoring them wouldn't bring me closure. If I wanted to move forward without carrying this weight anymore, I needed answers. So, reluctantly, I agreed to meet them. Not because I owed them anything, but because I owed it to myself. As I drove to the cafe where we'd arranged to meet, memories of the past flooded back, sharp and painful. The last time I'd seen them, I was broken and alone. This time, I walked in strong, successful, and unshaken. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure. I held all the power now. The moment I walked into the cafe, I spotted them immediately. They looked older, gray hair, tired eyes, but unmistakably the same people who had once turned their backs on me. My mom stood up first, her hands trembling as she reached out to hug me. I stepped back instinctively, my body refusing to let her close the gap between us. "Sarah," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, "we've missed you so much." Missed me? The words felt hollow, meaningless after everything they'd done. I took a deep breath and sat down across from them, keeping my expression calm but firm. For the next hour, they talked and talked and talked. They apologized endlessly, offering excuses about how scared and confused they were when I told them I was pregnant. "We thought we were protecting you," my dad said, his voice cracking. "We didn't know how to handle it." Handle it? As if kicking your own daughter out was some kind of misguided act of love. I listened silently at first, letting their words hang in the air like smoke, but eventually, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Protecting me?" I shot back, my voice steady but laced with anger. "You abandoned me when I needed you most? Do you have any idea what I went through? The nights I cried myself to sleep because I didn't know if I could keep going? You didn't protect me, you broke me." As the conversation went on, I saw cracks forming in their carefully constructed apologies. Their guilt wasn't enough to erase the years of pain they'd caused. Still, I made sure to tell them exactly how their actions shaped my life. Not just the hardships, but also the strength and independence I found in spite of them. By the end of it, they were both crying uncontrollably, begging for forgiveness. But forgiveness isn't something you can demand. It's something you earn. And as I looked at them sitting there, broken and desperate, I realized they weren't the same people I'd left behind all those years ago. Whether that mattered anymore, well, that was up to me. In the days that followed our meeting, I wrestled with what to do next. Part of me wanted to shut them out completely, to let them feel even a fraction of the loneliness they'd inflicted on me. But another part knew that holding on to bitterness would only weigh me down, not them. So I made my decision. I wouldn't reconcile, but I would offer closure. For myself, not for them. A few days later, I sent them a letter. In it, I wrote about everything, the pain, the struggle, the victories, and told them that while I forgave them, it wasn't because they deserved it. It was because I refused to let their mistakes define my future any longer. That letter marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Instead of dwelling on the past, I chose to focus on the life I'd built. The thriving business, the incredible team, and most importantly my son, who reminded me daily why I fought so hard to succeed. Liam often asked about his grandparents, curious why he didn't have the same relationships with them as his friends did with theirs. One evening, sitting together on the couch, I finally explained everything in simple terms he could understand. "Sometimes people make choices that hurt others," I told him gently. But those choices don't determine your worth. You're strong, smart, and loved more than you'll ever know. His hug afterward said everything words couldn't. Now, whenever I reflect on my journey, I see it not just as a story of revenge or resilience, but as a testament to the power of choice. I chose to rise above bitterness, to create a life filled with purpose and joy despite the odds stacked against me. And through my platform, I've been able to inspire others facing similar struggles: single parents, abandoned children, anyone who's ever felt like the world was against them. My final thought? Life has a way of balancing the scales if you let it. For me, success wasn't about proving my parents wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could build something beautiful from the ashes of rejection.